Hello, greetings to everybody. Talking to the infamous and famous David Manley. I've been a fan of your rules for over 2 decades now.
Wow.
I may be one of your longest running. Well, I don't know, except for, do you? Well, that's one of my first questions. Have you gamed with the same group over the last couple of decades?
A few. I mean, groups come and go, and we've moved house, quite a few times over the last sort of 20, 30 years or so. But yeah, so some of my gaming group, stretch back over the same time period, and there's new guys as well. So, but yes, it's yeah, keep the old group going.
So we're here to, of course, talk about far distant ships. How long would you say this has existed in either in your brain or on paper or on a computer?
Wow. So the very first germs of this idea sort of kicked off around about 1995, I think it was.
Oh wow! Okay.
So we used to have a wargaming group that met in Trowbridge when I lived out that way, and yeah, playing through a big Napoleonic game, that we knew we were never going to have enough time to finish. I just thought, there really ought to be a fast play set of fleet action rules, and that's when it started. And it's been through all sorts of developments. In that time, it's been worked on. It's been nearly finished. It's been put on a hard drive and forgotten about. Resurrected. Combat system completely changed several times, but now finally, it's done and it's out. Ooh, you've gone very quiet. I can't hear you.
When I originally picked up Form Line of Battle, I think it was about 2000, 2001. I think it might have been the 3rd edition. So Form Line of Battle had existed at that same time, and prior to that, when was the first edition of Form Line of Battle?
Oh, that must have been that was late 80s. I think it was.
Oh wow! Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I didn't. Okay. So we don't want to get too much into Form Line of Battle, but did far distant ships evolve from that core or from a different core of rules?
No, it was completely different. There was no real connection between them at all, other than obviously the subject and the idea that I was going to deal with ships in a kind of generic manner in terms of rates, but the whole sort of movement system, combat system, command and control was completely different.
What was I going to say? So I thought what we might do is just kind of slowly walk through the phases a little bit and just talk a little bit about each one. Let me get some of this in front of myself. Let me share my screen. This is not what I wanted to do. Let me stop sharing. Share again. And I'll do my entire screen. All right, so I have some of the images from the, hopefully that's not picture within picture here. So is it okay now?
Yeah, I can see it. Yes.
Okay, so I did take out the turn sequence from the rules. I didn't want to show the rules in its entirety, but I took the turn sequence out of here just to be a little bit more detailed than the quick sheet there. So tell me a little bit about command points. Had that always been in this system, or was it added on over time?
Okay. So yeah, so the command point system as applied to these rules is relatively new, but that goes back to I suppose one of the sets that really kicked off long face games a few years ago, which was Lord of the Sea, which was my my medieval set, and that came about through various reasons, based very much on DBA. So Phil Barker's DBA set of rules.
Wow, Phil Barker.
So if you think of command points as being the same as pips in DBA, then you're on the right lines. And I had quite a long chat, via email with Phil about the whole thing, and said, this is what I'm planning to do. Are you happy with it? And he was, he was fine. So I thought, okay, I'm happy to apply that approach. So that's what command points are. They're they reflect, I suppose. Well, they combine the ability of the commander to command his force, but they also fold in, the ability to do, things like damage control. And I did at one point think about, running those as separate things, because they are actually separate issues. But generally, I found in order to, it worked quite well combining them into a single aspect, because it gives the players some really hard choices at sometimes to make, in terms of am I going to concentrate on trying to get the squadron back in one piece, or
especially if you roll horribly.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's you can bet your boots that when you need to send some particularly clever orders or something to pull off that exquisite maneuver which is going to win the game, that's when you're going to roll a one and you've got a ship which is in dire straits, and you're going to need your points to sort that out.
I kind of liked that. I kind of liked the idea of the general chase as well, and that you could still maybe we probably talk to it a little bit more as we talk about formations a little bit. But I kind of like that there were still opportunities to allow command points, and I liked that there was a slight difference, or that there is a slight difference between the fleet admiral and the squadron admirals. And I did want to get into that a little bit when we start getting into signals and writing orders, because there's probably there are certain different ways potentially to GM this or run it, where you could even have one fleet admiral that does all the orders, and then, or they're just there's just an interesting house rule potential here too.
Well, it is interesting. I mean, just picking up on that. So talking with some of the play testers about how you could take those sorts of things forward, and we remembered. I don't know if you ever come across. I think it was a set of rules that Andy Callan wrote back in the 80s for Napoleonic games, and he had this idea of sending signals to players. So somebody would be the fleet admiral, and you'd have the three other players who were the squadron commanders, and they would have like little mock-ups of the masts on the ships, which they would then little flags on.
Oh yeah. Actually, I somewhat did that in my little module. I was going to use the signal flags and send them off, and then if they didn't make it, you could have like you could have a signal burning or something, or whatever.
Yeah. So I think for a fun game or a one-off or something, that'd be a really good thing to do. Wouldn't want to do it all the time.
Yeah, exactly.
You get a bit stressy.
All right. Let me think about other command points. Hold on a second. I'm going to reshare. All right. So again, for the audience that might not obviously have read the rules fully yet, the second phase, of course, is the signal phase, and I think you had described it as 6 words using the standard signaling, which if you give it a read, it's pretty. I think it's common orders from other games in the past to Heart of Oak. Right. And then you had mentioned the other signal book, and I think I found a copy of it, and that I didn't realize there were like over 2,000 different varieties of those flag. I can't remember the name of the admiral who wrote them in 1806.
Popham.
Yeah.
Signal system. Yes. Yeah. Well, and I mean that was just one example of obviously the French had their own system, and the US Navy had their own systems as well, and I was actually quite surprised at how frequently they changed.
Right.
And also then, as well as the signal systems, you have the admiral's private signals as well. So a new ship arriving on station, the very first thing that happens,
right,
when they repair on board the flagship to pay their respects to the admiral, is some poor clerk in the admiral's office has then got to draw out another set of the private signals to pass over to the captain. So you can reflect those in the signaling system as well, by having a few a few blanks that you can then write your own particular.
Right. I liked that aspect of it as well.
Yeah.
All right, let me reshare here. Let's get move along. So the movement phase. I enjoyed the fact that orders could get delayed. At most, it seemed like by a probability perspective, you had to be pretty inept for it to be. I think you literally had to be an inept commander for it to be to the point where it's 0, right? And 0 means it never got there at all, right?
Yeah.
So then there's a roll and there's a modifier from the squadron commander modifier, SCM, for whether or not you get it that turn and can act upon it, or you basically are stuck with your previous orders and cannot act upon it until the next movement phase, correct?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, it's one of these things that's fascinated me for years. There's all sort of question about, command and control of, forces at land or and on the sea. And I don't think people really appreciate just how difficult it is to do that. To command a fleet of 30 or 40 ships spread over several miles of sea, where the only way you've got to actually command those ships is with little flags.
Right, absolutely.
So and that's why I really wanted to get into this was that command and control aspect, because I'm used to playing games, as I'm sure many play where you've got that kind of perfect command,
right?
Everything does everything when you want it, and you pull off all these fantastic maneuvers. But
I like that I think you additionally had a modifier for whether the flag admiral of that squadron was in the front of a line ahead formation or not too. That was kind of interesting. So yeah, the rule set's very good, by the way. I'll give you lauds later, but I'm holding my excitement. Very good rule set. Let's just kind of roll through. So moving the squadrons in accordance with others. One interesting aspect of this phase is that, and I think it's a very important one, is that you do all of the squadron moves first, and then you do the independent ships second. I guess one question I had was, if you are on a general chase, that's still considered. If you're on a general chase order, you're considered an independent mover. Is that correct still?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
So general chase, your formation's broken up.
Right.
It's sort of Nelson's pell-mell battle thing, and everybody's off doing their own thing, really.
So another thing to point out for people is that there is a base movement for ships, and we'll look at an order of battle here maybe towards the end of this and kind of describe how all this stuff works together a little bit. But just for the audience's sake, that there's a baseline movement. So for a 74 gunner, I think it's 10 centimeters or inches, whichever. I'll say units of movement, and then modifiers. I can tell it's a David Manley rule set. Just I don't know why, it's very clean. You have a very clean modifier approach to rules. I like it. In this one in particular, I felt like you got even. It was interesting. You got even more modifiers into it without overcomplicating it on the other end, right? So like where form line of battle was more detailed in penetration of the cannonball and how much rating you would do based on how close you were, and just in the variation like this. This accomplishes almost the same thing in a more condensed fashion. It's very interesting. Okay, it pulls it off very well.
Well, it was an area where I've rewritten that table and in fact rewritten the whole approach to movement, several times. This was one that just felt like it worked.
Absolutely.
And I think it worked well because it's looking at a fleet perspective. If I was doing a game, for more sort of individual ship actions, I'd do something a bit different. But no, I think for fleet actions, it worked. I think it works quite well.
And I like how again, for audience sake, not having read it potentially, I like how you allowed for a balancing of speed without getting too wiggly with the rules, right? So in other words, if you had a squadron of 3 ships, one of which is a second rate that only has a base of 8 and the rest have a base of 10, right? I like how you kind of allowed a fudge factor, if you will, for everybody to stay at the same speed, either either in that situation, or if one of them's damaged, you can kind of, at least you have a little bit of wiggle room as far as adding sail to that one ship. I think in my part 1 little snippet, I had done it to the point where it looked like in most situations you would probably get a fire or modifier, and we'll look a little bit more at all the modifiers in a minute. If you had too much sail, right? I think I was halfway between a full sail and go ahead.
Yeah. So ships captains did actually have quite a fair degree of control over their speed just by trimming sails, or spilling a bit of wind from a sail or something. And I've played in games where your sail setting is this, therefore your speed is, and you're restricted to moving exactly that distance. And then you end up with all sorts of weirdness going on.
Right, and I think, oddly enough, it's somewhat cleaner than Form Line of Battle in that regards, because if I recall correctly, in Form Line of Battle, right. So again, just a little cleanliness there, where I think the rule was that you can back up to 3 centimeters in, but only I like how you caveated it. I think you caveated it with the fact that you had to, in order to maintain cohesion, right?
That's right. Yeah.
You couldn't do it just because, right?
No, you need a reason for doing it.
So I think my question would be, does that also adhere to being in a tight formation versus, so in other words, if you had already been ordered for a tight formation and then somehow you were out of whack, is that allowing for that backing sail, if you will, to meet that formation? Yeah, exactly.
Yes, that's right. Yes, okay. If you're doing a formation change like that, or if a ship has had to drop out of formation, so you've now got a hole in the line,
right?
Then yes, that allows for for ships to trim sails to allow that formation to reform, I suppose.
Okay, I'll just run a little quicker through the rest of the turn sequence. So the rest of the turn sequence then is independent ship movements, like we were calling out before. So, and it costs more from a command point perspective in order to order those independent changes, at least changes in those independent movements. So
I mean the independent ships thing, you could look at it as being a bit of a game mechanic, but it's really there to discourage players from operating the ships independently.
Right, right. But if you have
to, don't sail around independently if you don't have to.
Right. If there's a distinct reason to. There's an order to do it, and it's a general chase, and there's a reason you're doing a general chase, which is usually because somebody's about to strike. Let's see. Okay, and then we start getting into gunnery, but I think what we'll do is we'll look at a few direct examples. All right, so let me stop sharing this for a moment. Okay, let me try to get some other things up. Let me share. Okay, so hopefully you can see my tabletop simulator. What I thought we might do is just bring the lines close together and kind of just. They're actually pretty close together right now, anyway. But we're gonna take a quick look at the cheat sheets, just a tiny bit, to kind of give folks a little bit of more of an idea of the modifiers involved. Here's some other potential command point costs, as well, as we kind of discussed before. What I really love, and I don't know if this was intentional or not. Have you ever played Star Wars by West End Games by any chance?
I haven't, no.
Oh, okay. Because this is very similar. I'm kind of glad to hear that, but also a little sad. Because this is very much like the wound levels from West End Games Star Wars, and it's considered a brilliant system.
Oh, okay.
So take it as a compliment. So it's really good. It works extremely well because it fits back into all the other parts very well, and I like that it allows some repair, but you can't get better than
That's right.
worn,
You can
right?
never get back to your fully intact state
Pristine. But
once you started
but
taking damage.
it's pretty costly too. So
Yeah.
relatively speaking, in a turn. So in a squadron, let's just say we're talking about 3-ship squadrons, which is the way I have this thing set up. So you're gonna need to probably potentially use at least one of your command points for a new order, and then 2 command points to go from light to worn. That's general, repairing a hull, etc.
Yeah.
So I like it because it's just enough. There's some decision involved there without being too fiddly-faddly, right? And so I just like it. It's good. A little bit about movement modifiers, and basically how it works with attitude for the audience here. So all the attitude related modifiers, I like how it's very, very, very well organized as well. So again, the 10 base centimeter movement, if the attitude would become running here, then you just take 2 off of it, and all these other modifiers, damage is incorporated, which I can't even now. It's been a little bit since I played Formline, but that was factored into some other rule sets, but not. It's clean here, right?
Yeah. So Form of Battle looks at it in terms of well, you modify the number of dice that you throw depending on how many masts you've lost.
Right. Exactly.
So it's similar, but yeah, this is just an easy way of doing it for this level.
And I was hesitant at first. I don't know why, but I was hesitant at first to incorporate the firing high or firing low, the firing at the mast or firing at the. I just didn't know. I didn't know at first until I read it over a couple more times how much of it that would factor in. And then I started reading a little bit more about the results. I don't know if it's depicted here. Yeah, it is a little bit over here. The effects of damage, right?
Yeah.
I think I was wondering if it was going to be too much of an effect, but then I reread that pretty much you only start to get a pretty heavy factoring when it becomes a heavy damage against sail, correct?
Yeah, because you can adjust for the damage that you've taken to your sails by crowding on more sail. But you come to the point where you've run out of extra sail that you can put up, and the damage really starts to take effect. It was interesting because this is one of these areas where originally I wasn't going to include it. I was just factoring the whole thing in. But yeah, some of the play testers got quite vocal in their views that if I'm playing the French, then damn it, I want to be able to fire at the the masts of the Rosbeefs, so that I can slow them down and I can leg it.
So when you let me see something. Here it is, heavy rigging damage. This is what I was looking for. So let me. So in order for sail damage to take any effect on your movement, it's only if you reach heavy damage at that point for heavy mass damage. So you would not include that, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I just want to make sure I was reading that properly. All right. So let's start talking a little bit. Okay, we've gone through command points. We've gone a little bit through movement. Let's talk a little bit more about the gunnery. So your range brackets are 0 to 8 for close, 8 to 20 for medium, 20 to 30 for long. Let's see. Oh, I did have a question. I think it was actually written as there was a parenthetical in the rule itself. There was a double asterisk. Okay, there's a double asterisk reference in the note in the rules that mentions adding 1 if it's a 4th rate, or adding 2. There's just a slight.
Oh, okay. Yes, it's the modifier for carronades.
Yes. Yeah. So is this is accurate? This one right here, +2 or +3?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, well spotted.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
yeah, I mean, but the idea there is, the bigger ships could carry, heavier, carronade
right,
loads.
and I
than
think
the
that
smaller
was,
ships. So,
and that was factored in well.
yeah.
I mean, of course, other rule systems do factor in
Yeah.
carronade um, uh, factors at close range. Let's see, what else did I want to kind of show here? I really liked. Okay, so when you're rolling for to hit, if you will,
Mhm.
I like that it's a comparison, and I really like. And again, I think this is a David Manleyism. Is I like how you factored in the critical into those other rolls. It's like
Okay, right, yeah.
you saved me one roll, and
Yes.
it's great. You say right, it's very good.
Absolutely.
Right, but it's neat. It's really neat how you did it. Where so the shooter rolling a 6 and then the target rolling a 1 makes a critical hit, and then the opposite. I love that. The opposite being the shooter critical hit, and
Yeah.
as you can see here, you can read. All right.
Yeah, and it's surprising in some, a lot of games we've played, how often that shooter critical just really kind of throws a spanner into your plans. But
Mm-hmm.
it happened. Just trying to.
And here it might be described in the rules, and I'm just forgetting it. But can you get multiple of the same critical hit? I can't remember.
I think you can. Yeah.
You can, right? And there's no limit to that. So in other words, crit hull damage,
No. If you took a second hull critical, then your defense factor will go down by 2.
You just keep going.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's so rare. It's like what, 1 in 36.
Yeah, I mean, yes, it is unusual for
right.
ships to suffer.
I also like how you factored in the mass falling.
Yeah, that's just one of those things that I did look at that table and thought, have I gone a little bit too far with the detail in there? But it is one of these.
It's good because then you reused it, didn't you? There's, and please jog my memory here. There's another rule where if you're taking mass damage, right?
Yeah.
Of a certain level, doesn't it cause one of those automatically? I can't remember. That's not depicted on the quick sheet.
Yeah, well, you can get to a point where you become dismasted. Yes, but
or it causes a critical, correct?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, the battle that you were using, for example, it was actually a case where this happened. Where one of the admiral ships, I think was it the French flagship, suffered a in fact it wasn't actually damage to the mast, but damage to the wheel, and the ship headed up into the wind, and the other ships thought, well, is that the admiral's plan, or and it did end up causing quite a bit of confusion in the fleet, and so those sorts of events, whilst you could look at them as being maybe a little bit too detailed for a fleet action set of rules, they were actually relevant. So having agonized about that particular
I definitely
spot on the
I don't
table,
think it's overdone. The probability alone is so low.
Well, indeed,
it's unique enough. If it happens, it's going to be one of those situations where you start laughing at each other at the convention, right? All right, so so I think we hinted at this before earlier, but I really like this, and again, this is very similar to Star Wars WEG by West End Games, is basically a wound level for the ship, and then I really like this is that it's aggregated, it's compressed ruling, but there's still a little bit of game in there too. I like that because it's very well balanced right here, and
so I've used that approach in quite a few of my recent rules.
Very good. So just for audience description's sake, so what you do is you do all these modifiers. The shooter rolls, adds in their crew quality modifier. The defender rolls a d6 as well, factors in all these factors, and then you compare it, and then you determine whether or not if the shooter's less, no damage is done, equal, worn, etc., etc. And then again, if the next turn or from another ship you get hit again, you determine whether or not the wound level or the effector damage level goes up. So it's great. And I think it's really clean. It's easy to document. And again, as far as documenting those factors or hits and so forth, I like the additional document you put up, by the way.
Yes, yeah. Well,
So
I should have put it up right from the start, but I got reminded by somebody that I'd forgotten to do it.
So for example, let's just, hopefully it's kind of a little weird with the way I'm doing it, but so in other words, as ships get damaged, we would put damage on them, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So what these represent are the light, medium, and heavy for the hull damage. These are the mast level damages as well as the dismast. Fire, strike, turn marker for if you're going to do a turn in secession, for example, and we'll maybe do an example of that real quick. A couple other things to point out. I think I pointed out in my previous review, but the broadside, I'm assuming I am measuring this appropriately. We'll get down to it better. For pretty well representative of like figurehead hallmarks at 2400.
Okay.
That was the goal, at least. So I'm assuming I'm putting this correctly behind the broadside. So the broadside here out to 30. The max again was 30 units of measurement. Vice versa.
So just asking, is that Tabletop Simulator you've got there?
Yeah, this is Tabletop Simulator. And what's really cool, this map is huge. It just happened to be the only one I have. So this is kind of like 2400 scale on a table, but the scale is a little weird. But so this would be, I'm doing it in inches.
Yeah.
But in reality, it probably would be 7 meters, right?
Well, I must say your ability to place markers and things on your Tabletop Simulator tabletop is way better than mine.
I've done it a lot.
It takes ages for me to get in the right place. Well done.
Played way too much and not enough. These were the flag markers I was going to use for the orders. So what? Now what I also envision doing is possibly putting like a fog of war thing, and then like I think I actually put so the person could actually put the actual full order and then show it when it takes effect. Okay,
right.
That was the intention. All right, and of course here I also have the white and red.
Yep, make sure your dice are different colors.
Yep, and what was I going to say? I can't remember. The I can't remember if it was red or white, but it took effect in your rolling, right? But when you do 2d6 for was it for morale? Oh no, it was for fire repair. That's what it was.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. I really like how you factored that in. Again, a David Manleyism, factoring in a rule within the roll doubled. It's really I like that. It's done well, and the fact that you do it throughout balances it. So we've gone over a pretty good amount. Let me see. Let me just show the order of battle a little bit, just to kind of give people an idea how things are kind of organized somewhat. You can yell at me that you disagree on some of these qualities. I did not make all the British +2. Okay, that's okay. All right. So again, just kind of show folks, kind of give them a little bit of a guideline for how these factor in. This is for the Battle of Cape Henry, 1781. I always found it interesting that they put both of their admirals in the same squadron in effect. So this would be an interesting battle to fight out, because both of your flag admirals were in the I called it the White Squadron, whatever. So things to note here would be the fact that I've given the British a little bit of a boost on squadron command modifiers. I gave Royal Oak a slight boost because it has that other admiral, whatever, etc. So this is how an order of battle would look. I just wanted to have people see it. There would be slightly different modifiers involved during gunnery if a third rate was firing on a same rate inferior. So if for some reason Robust was firing on that was is interesting. So if robust for some reason firing on Provence, then let's take a look at that. So is there a difference of, yeah, there you go. Superior of the same rate, the fire.
Yeah, so the whole superior inferior thing came about. You know, when I was at one point when I was in, you know, in that sort of iterating down to a set of rules that worked. You know, I had ratings for, you know, 80 gun ships, you know, 74s, 64s, you know, 60s, and just ended up with a ship data table that was just too cluttered. And it really didn't help, and the stat ranges didn't work very well. Just the idea of again, you know, it's a thing that's, you know, is sort of reflected in, you know, DBA rules and stuff like that. The idea of inferior and superior treats, which, you know, give you benefits within that same class. You know, so you for a third rate inferior or a third rate superior ship gives it a better bonus against.
Yeah, it works well.
Another third rate ship, but not against a you know, a second rate or a fourth rate. It only affects within its own rate.
And I think you also factored that into the boarding rules, which are not depicted here, but very, you know, similarly.
Yeah, I mean, boarding's not something you should be doing all the time.
Yeah, exactly.
It does feature quite large in some sets of rules, but actually, you know, it's a relatively, certainly in fleet actions, a relatively rare event.
Trafalgar was actually a rarity in some regards, right? And some of that, because there was some of that action there, but that was probably one of the only major battle instances of it. Especially if the size was different. I want anybody playing another rule set that thinks you can jump over to another ship that's 20 feet or more higher to try it yourself, right? All right, and then you have to, of course, put a knife in your mouth.
Yeah.
And arrow flying.
Climb through the enemy's gun ports. That's the way.
Yeah, sure, do that. You won't get a ramrod in your eye at all. All right. All right. Let's talk a little bit about turning a little bit, because what I wanted to point out is it's liberal in this rule set to a degree. Pun intended. So it's up to 45 degrees. Now, the one thing I was thinking about yesterday is, okay, so who's going to try to break this rule set, right? You always have to try to think that way. And so the one thing I was a little concerned with, and you can bury my qualms here. So and I like how you kind of give this benefit for a line ahead, squadron. So let's just say this British squadron, is that the British? Yes. Sorry, I always have to double check. So this squadron here, if it has a line ahead, easy sail, obviously at this point they're probably about what are they at? On southeast, whatever. That was their order, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Let's say their movement is 10, and they wanted to turn. So in effect, you could move. So in effect, that didn't work. You were talking about my tabletop skills.
Yeah.
So let's just say we had gone our whole 10. In effect, the rules give you the option to move and then turn, right? So the only thing I was seeing.
Well, they do if you've ordered the ships to do it, and if they
right. Okay. You're right. All right. Yeah. Right. So I take that back. So it was. So they let's just say that was their previous order.
Yeah.
All right. So then this order would be turn starboard, southwest, whatever. You know.
Yeah.
You can do that at any point in the turn, in effect, correct? I just wanted to verify that. So the only problem I see in that is, like, if I, for some reason, I wanted to, for some strange reason, wait till the exact end, right? Then how would you handle that? Like, so
if the leading ships he's executing its turn at the end of the movement.
Right.
So you turn that ship to whatever the new heading is, and then you put one of those turn markers down.
Right.
So then when the next ship reaches that point, then it executes the same turn.
So again, these are, I think by default, I have it set at 15 minute, it's going to be 15 degree increments. So I can go up to 45 degrees like that.
Yeah.
At that point, if I had waited until the end, it would be like that. Now, if I had done that 5 inches ago. Okay, so the reason I mention that is you could get into a situation where somebody tries to turn, and then the next turn, if they keep line ahead, they could try to turn immediately. How would you handle that?
Well,
you understand?
Well, they can only turn to an heading that they've been ordered to turn to.
Mm-hmm.
So if they've been ordered to turn north,
so again,
or whatever. Or,
so this new order. So this
new
order.
So let's say they've been ordered to turn to the west, just
or whatever. Yeah. Okay.
So that was they can execute their turn, in the first turn of movement, and then in the next one execute another turn. But then once they're heading west, then they're now they're in compliance with their orders, and so they must stick to that until they receive another order that says, no, actually, no, I want you to go to north.
But technically, somebody could have ordered them southwest and then immediately in the next turn ordered them southeast, right?
Yes, if you wanted to.
Right. It's a little odd, but so in other words, I don't know why you would do that. Maybe to open up your broadside if the enemy line was here, possibly, and then possibly opening up your other broadside to.
Well, possibly yes, but just the fact that you're operating in a line, and if you've got multiple squadrons, then your squadrons are probably working in a line with each other effectively. Just the fact that you are kind of trying to drive this ribbon of death across the table, will naturally limit your ability to maneuver. So you could do it, but you're probably going to end up with your fleet in a bit of a mess when you.
Yes, if you try to get too fancy.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, this is the thing. I mean, it's one of the things we found out several times during some of the play testing was people could come up with some really, really good ideas for things to do, but the command system would limit their ability to do it with confidence. It's a bit like when you play Fire and Fury or something, and your perfectly executed attack, where you're going to send your 5 brigades steaming across the table to attack the enemy, suddenly falters because one of the brigades doesn't go.
Right.
And that's what can happen here. When you're sending your orders, and
right. If you you're right.
And the order isn't received, or it's delayed until the next turn or something.
Right. Mm-hmm. And I guess I kind of brought this up by accident, but there are you either can fire one broadside in the turn, or you can fire both, but only if you're a crack true quality, right? Something to call out. And I liked that whatever you pick one side to be not modified, and then the other one's -2. So just something to call out too.
Yeah, I mean, certainly in fleet actions, the opportunities for ships to fire both their broadsides are fairly limited.
Right.
Okay,
exactly.
if you were the French at the Nile, where you've got British ships coming down both sides, then you would want to do that. But in most cases, the firing both broadsides rule is probably not going to be in effect, because you're just not going to have the opportunity to do it.
For some reason, I was oddly pleased to not find a first broadside mod. I don't know why. It was kind of weird. It's every system has it. It's definitely something, but for fleet rules, I think.
But you can add it in if you want.
Yeah, you're right. Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
but it just equals out. I've always people.
It's fun.
Players sometimes overly wait for it. It kind of oddly weirdly affects convention play that I've found. I don't know
Yeah.
why people hold it back and hold it back and hold it back. It's like, if you're holding it back that much, guess how much smoke is around your target at this point, you know? So, right. So I just feel like it's like a factor that, yes, if everybody waited and then somebody fired first, yes, maybe that guy.
Yeah.
Right. So I don't know.
Yeah.
So it's
I
just
mean, it's one of the things that it's always been, one of my philosophies. I've had people, dropping me emails and saying, I hope you don't mind, but I'm playing your rules and I've changed something. To which my response is, I think that's great. I love people, getting into the rules and thinking, okay, well that's fine, but my perception of, reality is probably a bit different from Dave's, because he's a bit of an idiot sometimes. So I'm going to change it, and I'm really pleased when people tweak things. And so if anybody wants to add in a first broadside modifier, that's absolutely fine.
And I think we've covered just about most of it. Is there, what is the most significant change that was made to the rules through the development that you can remember?
So the most significant change was adopting the combat system from Lord of the Sea, which happened about probably 3 years ago. Because before that, I was using a far more, I suppose, conventional combat system, which didn't really, I mean, it worked, but it didn't feel quite right.
Did anybody else did anybody else suggest you make that change, or did it just kind of become a
No, well, having played around with that system, so I've used it in all of my recent sets of rules, apart from Narrow Seas. So a medieval set, Renaissance, Ancients as well, and right through to the sort of the Asian turtle ships rules I'm working on at the moment. Having and World War II, my First and Second World War rules use the same approach. So I suppose what it is having got a system that works, a system that people liked, and it kind of meets, I suppose, the house style of play. If you pick up a set of these and you've played, Find, Fix, and Strike, or you've played Cannon, Cross, and Crescent, or something like that, then the system will feel familiar. It's not the same system.
right? Exactly.
The damage levels will be different, the effects will be different, but the actual general approach to it, you've got an offensive die roll and a defensive die roll, and you compare the results, and look at the odds to get the results.
That's what
that style is the same.
That's what I like about your rules in general. I can tell you wrote them, but it's not just Iron and Fire 2. I mean, it's not just like. I also have played Fire When Ready Gridley, and that's a good system too. One of the first ones I ever played was Iron and Fire.
Yeah.
That is I would even venture to say it's one of the more perfect systems for that very particular period. Very well done. I'll just say that.
I still enjoy playing it. I don't play Iron and Fire as much as I ought to. And I for some reason I seem to be spending a lot of time at the moment making models of American Civil War ships. So I suspect I might be playing a bit more of that once lockdown kind of disappears. But we'll see.
So I think I will do just a separate playthrough. I think we're both kind of our works have.
It's been a long day.
Been a long day. It's probably been a longer day for you as well. But I really appreciate you talking to me about the rule set. I'm sure there may be questions from the audience. Let me just make sure nobody's asked. Hold on a second. Hold on. Eric Elder has asked a question. So no tracking of crew, hull, or sail damage. Interesting. Have to give it a go. Yeah, I mean, Eric mentions
so there kind of is. The crew and the hull kind of stand together. But hull damage and sail damage is reflected in those damage levels. So the ship is suffering light, medium, or heavy damage. And I thought that was appropriate for this kind of level of game, because the admiral's not going to know. He's not going to need to know. He doesn't want to know the detail of the damage that HMS Venerable has taken. He's going to be interested in that overall level of capability in the ship, but
right.
He hasn't got the time to go into the minutiae, and in fact he hasn't even got the ability to get that information.
Crews are somewhat factored into the boarding factor, though. Like, for example, when I ported this over, the original Form Line of Battle scenario mentioned the French 74s and 80s having more crew, so that is factored in. And I think, please correct me if I'm wrong, you factor in almost all of it into the rolling of the crew. It was unfortunately the last thing I read very late last night.
Yes.
Remind me again. What do you factor into the boarding? You factor in not only the crew quality.
Yeah. But so there is the boarding factor that reflects the I suppose the individual circumstances of the ship within the rate. So as you said, if you've got ships with particularly large crews or particularly effective crews, if you had crews or nationalities or whatever who are particularly noted as being particularly ferocious in boarding actions, then you can give them a bonus for that as well. I didn't want to go down the idea of national characteristics per se. So that there are a whole load of modifiers, as you said, for things like boarding factors and command factors and admirals and crew ratings and things that you can apply across the board. So there's nothing like you're British, so you get +2 to your gunnery, or you're French, so you always shoot on the uproll or something like that. You can apply whatever modifiers you think are appropriate for a particular force at a particular time. Just make it flexible.
I wanted to really scare you, so we're about to play the Battle of Trafalgar in 10 minutes.
Excellent.
Just a quick question. I mean, Eric was kind of pointing out the fact that he might run it with a lot of ships. Like, how would you split up the order of battle here? But approximately 9 ships an admiral?
Yeah, something like that, I think. I mean, we've done Trafalgar a few times, and that's pretty much how it's panned out.
I might actually challenge myself with doing a solo play of this for as long as I can handle it. I am gonna do that for my next solo play, because what I wanted to show, and I didn't necessarily exemplify it. The line breakthrough rules are very good. I mentioned I wanted to talk about that. Extremely well done, because what you do is you factor in not only passing through. I really like how you did it, because if these ships are over 8 centimeters apart or 8 inches apart, then you can just pass through without rolling for it, right? But if they're within a certain distance, then you have to roll to be able to accomplish it. And what I also liked is that you allowed for the line ahead to have a slightly better chance, right? Because if you were line abreast, then each one would have to roll independently. Is that correct?
Yeah.
It's really cool.
Again, it's one of these things that's always bugged me with some previous games. I mean, you get the same thing with if you're playing Form Line of Battle. That there's a gap in the line, so I'm just going to stay on my ship straight through. And when you read battle reports and things, it wasn't an exact science. It wasn't a foregone conclusion that they were going to be able to force their way through a line. If you've got a solid line of enemy ships, you can order the leading ship through till the cows come home. But if he thinks he's not going to make it,
and
then they're going to bear off.
Did I read correctly that if you're successful at it, you can actually fire as you bear here,
Yeah,
and
that's
you
right.
basically
Yeah,
get a free fire, right? And
yeah.
then also, I think you were saying, do you get a free movement as
And
well?
you can form up on the other side of the enemy line as well. So yeah, having your line broken is pretty bad,
Right. And oops,
as I guess it should be.
and this is what
No, you
happens
can't.
when
No.
you are unsuccessful.
Yeah,
What was I going to
failed
say
that
there?
role.
But you would have to order all of that, right? You
Yes.
would probably have to be successful at not only order break line,
Yes.
but you
Yeah.
would probably have to say then form line
Yeah.
ahead
Well,
north or
yes.
whatever, right?
Well,
Right.
you've got your 6 word limits or your 6 component limit, so you can factor that in.
What's also
Yeah.
interesting here is that you would have to be a crack crew to be able to fire on both
Yeah.
sides
Yes.
too.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
I wanted line breaking to be one of these things that doesn't happen very often, but when it does, it's kind of a bit of a momentous occurrence in the battle, because it wasn't that common, for a whole host of reasons.
right, and I really like how you handle it. This is well done. I'm going to open the floor just for any final questions. Does anybody watching have any other immediate questions? I'm going to put the cheat sheets in front of you in case that jogs Andy's memory as far as any questions they have on how it's executed. Any last minute questions, anybody?
Speak now or forever hold your peace.
Right, exactly. Or piece of 9, right? Whatever it's. All right. So at some point, I will do a playthrough fully soon,
Okay.
and do a part 3, and I'll let you know about that, and everybody can watch me do it live, and then make fun of me as I make horrible tactical decisions against myself. Or
Excellent.
if anybody wants to play me, I'd be more than welcome to just play test it with any of the audience members that wants to try it out. Cool. But thank you. It's a great rule set, and I hope it's well received. It's definitely well received by myself, and keep at it. Are you planning any supporting products for it by any chance?
What, for this particular set of rules?
Right. Yeah.
Yes. So I'll do what I've done with my other sets, and I'll be putting up free scenarios
Okay.
over the next few months. I've got a few that I need to just spruce up a bit, and I can do those. And I'm working on a campaign system, which again is something which I've been working on for around about 20 years or so, and I haven't quite got right yet. So at some point I'll crack that, and that'll be going up as well.
I thought I heard you mention potentially even doing a free supplement for Dutch Wars for.
So yes, that's another thing in the plan. Having been beaten up by a whole load of friends who are really into the Dutch Wars and those sorts of things. So we've had some discussions about applying this system to those battles where linear tactics wasn't really a thing. Well, it was to some extent, but also not in others. So the actual system itself will work, but it just needs to be tweaked to make it work, make it fit that particular era better. Yeah. So once I've cracked that, then yes, that'll go up as a initially it'll go up as a free supplement, and then I might just write it into the rule book and then just do an update to the rule book. But we'll see how that goes.
Awesome. Well, I thank you very much for your time and for a great rule set. So
that's great. Lovely.
Thanks. All right.
Thanks, Peter. Great. You too.